What's going on, guys? Running it back with another replay for you. Gonna be a domination showdown. Just on good old vanilla Arnheim. Very favorable Dawi map. Lots of the gunline factions have a pretty good matchup here, just because they're able to set up some pretty good artillery positions and gun lines that are a little bit easier to protect here than on other maps. Particularly if you get set up on this high ground objective and are able to control the number 2 coming down off the hill here, which Dawi look to be positioning for. They do have a flame cannon and the Goblobber up top here with a couple of Quarrelers. Very solid missile units, very heavily armored, and can be a little difficult to chew through for the Lizardmen if you don't have the right composition. We'll be seeing how mine is able to measure up here. Ripper Dactyl is going to be my first summit out, going to be very important for me, going to be a great source of mobility and damage, both against the infantry corps as well as especially the missiles and the artillery, which I was definitely game planning for at this point. Just pushing up out of the trees, seeing that there wasn't a whole lot here on the low ground, I felt pretty confident with my, basic algebra skills that I had, in fact, counted up the 15 units that were on the field here. Source Warrior Shields hiding in the trees, just chilling, not wanting to get too tangled up with the Dawi right now. Very hazardous for their health to do so. Dragon Slayers with Belegar, honestly pretty good option for a Dwarf Lord. Lots of people go with Thorek. Belegar is dirt cheap, though, with none of his items, and he's almost impossible to kill. I don't know what it is about Belegar specifically, but he's tough as nails, does not go down easily, and going after Dawi characters oftentimes is a bit of a trap. It can be very difficult to snipe them with any kind of meaningful speed and efficiency. So, I do have the 2 low ground objectives here. We do have a little bit of a value lead, or a ticket lead, I should say. And we're going to be taking this fight on the hill here. Quarrelers getting some good fire on the red-crested skinks right off the bat. I do fold them into combat against the Dwarf Warriors, where they will grind pretty effectively. They'll at least do some pretty noticeable damage against these guys, especially with some Kroxigor support. Kroxigors with their 100 armor won't mind getting shot at by the Quarrelers too much, and I am moving the Saurus Warriors forward, with Ripper Dactyls starting to move up. 2 of them now on the field for me, one up on the high ground here, the other going to be screaming up along the cliff's edge, getting up and over, looking to get after the artillery crews, but Giant Slayers advancing, getting ready for any dive attempt there, dropping a nice Uranus Thunderbolt on top of the Quarrelers here, doing some really good damage. Uranus Thunderbolt, excellent against the Dwarves. Just very good at clearing through their heavily armored infantry, despite the spell resist that they do have in droves. Bestowed on Rev Crystal and Nakai fighting up here on the hillside. Nakai doing some damage to the Dragon Slayer, also fighting these Dwarf Warriors back-to-back with the Rev Crystal, popping a heal on Nakai since he is taking quite a bit of damage from that Dragon Slayer, and kind of using Nakai as a bit of a distraction, I guess. He was taking a little bit of missile fire from the Quarrelers. Quarrelers do get jumped on by the Ripper Dactyls. You just absolutely open them up like sardine cans. Tremendous amounts of damage coming in from the Ripper Dactyls so far. Intercepting the rest of the Dawi reinforcements as they're moving up. You don't want to let Dawi trot too many infantry up to start capping points. The best thing you can do is catch them between objectives, which is basically what's going on here. Despite them having some pretty good engagements and getting a little bit of a value lead here, they're doing a lot of damage to my lords and some of my cheaper units on the field. The Skink cohorts, some of the Red Cresteds taking some pretty bad damage, but Ripper Dactyls avoiding most of the bad combats. I do have some Cold Wind Riders getting intercepted by Slayers up here and boxed out, as well as taking some damage from the Goblobber on the way in. Lapsing micro there, very unfortunate not be able to push them through, but despite that, most of the other fights are going alright for me. Kroxigors, Skink cohorts, and the Ripper Dactyls going to be working on breaking this Dawi Great Weapon position here. Red-Crested Skinks wanting to disengage a little bit from the Dwarf Warriors that they were fighting, trying to push them in on the Giant Slayers, but the Giant Slayers kiting around, getting away from those guys, screaming back up the hill to try and get after the Cold One Riders. Cold One Riders, both of them going to be turning around to help out the Saurus Shields here, who are engaged against the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass, who are doing really well against them, but a nice rear charge, really munching down on the HP of those guys, doing a ton of damage, and Nakai yet again getting attacked by the Dragon Slayers. Rev Crystal also getting attacked by the Dragon Slayers now, but Croxagores and some Skink cohorts screaming across to support this guy and try and allow him to push out of that very bad position that he's in. Skink Priest only with 5 kills, but a decent amount of value, just dropping Uranus Thunderbolt whenever I get an opportunity. Another one going to be going down here on top of the Dwarf Warriors. They move out of the way a little bit, but definitely going to kill, you know, a half dozen models there and do good HP damage. More importantly, giving me an opportunity maybe in the late game to do some good work against the remaining Dawi warriors there. Cold One Riders in a pretty mediocre fight for them. Croxagore is doing some nice damage, and I have lost a lot of what I had up top here. But my opponent getting a little too antsy going after my mobility pulls the Giant Slayers out of position, and I am able to jump on top of the Flame Cannon, and most importantly, the Goblobber. Goblobber having the Discourage and just being very cost-effective and long-range. Probably the more dangerous of the 2 artillery pieces, but doing a lot of work against both of them. Ripper Dactyls coming in clutch for me right now. Big value deficit that I'm at currently, but we do have a ticket lead. We do have my Red Cresteds doing some good work against Longbeards back here, pushing off 2 Longbeard Great Weapons, and reconsolidating my forces a little bit. A healthy Saurus Warrior trots out with some Croxagores, going to be trying to fully secure this high ground objective. Pretty uncontested on the number 3 right now. The Flame Cannons are trying to get back on the artillery pieces here. 2 of the guns, I believe, were destroyed there. Does look like it. So they're going to be a little bit less effective now, which is going to be really nice for me. Red Crested Skinks engaging against all of these Slayers here, taking tons of damage, but value trading relatively evenly. While back here, the remaining Red Crested Skinks that I've got on the field have done pretty nicely for themselves and crushed a lot of the Dawi, heavily armored Dawi infantry, leaving mostly Slayers, which is pretty scary considering I don't have a ton of actual infantry on the field. I've got 1 Skink cohort moving up. They're going to be able to do a lot of work against the Slayers. Skink cohorts, you know, they may not seem like the kind of infantry unit you would want to throw in against Slayers. When you look at it on paper, Slayers have way better stats, but really, Skinks, just by virtue of being so much cheaper, able to block up the Slayers. I get a nice Uranus Thunderbolt there, and they are doing some pretty good work, you know, gonna get their value back at the very least probably here, which is more than you can ask for from Skink cohorts more often than not. Usually they're just available on the field for cap weight, but against Slayers, doing some nice work here. Up to about 300 value almost. Up top here, we did cap the objective. We are pushing the Saurus Warriors in, trying to get after the Giant Slayers, who have taken a pounding, but also returned the favor against the Croxagores here, who are just getting absolutely chunked down at this point. They did rout, unfortunately, and then the Giant Slayers caught them before I could re-micro them out of that position. Rallying Red Crested Skinks going to be helping up top here. Miners with blasting charges, getting rear charged by the Ripper Dactyls, while the Saurus Warriors here fighting the Dragon Slayers and keeping them away from the Ripper Dactyls right now. And the Ripper Dactyls, being as healthy as they are, still getting me some really nice value, and now I'm just alpha striking the Slayers down here on the low ground. They've taken a bunch of damage from Slayers, or from Skink cohorts, I should say. And now just cycle charging them with Cold One Riders, pushing Croxagores in and then through the units, getting as much value as I can against these guys. Definitely needing to just lock the Dawi out of these positions that they're trying to hold with the Hero Squad and the Slayers that are trying to assist them. Do have some Dawi coming out of the summons here, some Miners and some Longbeards, grabbing the Cold One Riders and some Croxagores to go intercept those guys. Yet again, always disengage whenever you get the opportunity against the dwarves. Replace with your infantry. Skink cohort's doing that right now as the slayers are fighting against them. Very split up too, so the skink cohorts are doing some extra damage that they otherwise wouldn't be able to, as the slayers are very surrounded by this one unit. And really getting some great value for me. Those guys almost doubling the value that they cost to summon out. Spear, just regular Cold One Riders, not the Spear Riders, buffering for the Croxigors, who are getting in on top of the Miners, and the Longbeard's going to do some really nice damage there. Up top here, Longbeard's coming out, doing their very best to try and save this high ground position for the Dawi. Source Warriors are getting pushed off. Didn't trade amazingly, but the Ripper Dactyls up till this point have been doing some great work for me. 1,200 value on these guys here. These Red-Crested Skinks did rally. They got back in here with their big AP great weapons, and they've gotten me a little bit more than what they cost initially. Still at a value deficit, but with a ticket lead, which is huge against the dwarves, and I've been intercepting a lot of dwarven reinforcements as they're trying to get forward. LB definitely needs to start summoning some units out here, does get some on the field with just 2 regular dwarf warriors to push the high ground. Not having a lot of DPS, though, is really hurting him at this stage of the game. Lacking units to go toe-to-toe against my infantry and mobility at the same time. Losing all of the slayers on the low ground here. There's just a few remaining tattered guys holding against the Source warriors with shields, who I've resummoned out onto the field, and they have just done great work for me, getting through all of the slayers on the low ground here, while my mobility keeps the Longbeards and miners with blasting charges and these quarrelers occupied. But still, on Rev Crystal has been dropping some heals on all these guys. Nakai trying to just avoid the worst of the Dawi positions and popping a good miasma of Despair up here. Or, sorry, Primal Roar. Miasma of Despair is the debuff ability. Primal Roar giving 40 melee attack and the physical resist up top here, allowing me to absolutely crush the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass this second time around, not doing nearly as well as they did that first time. Unsummoning some Ripper Dactyls, going to be unsummoning the Red-Crested Skinks here in a moment as well. Gearing up for yet another wave of Dawi infantry, who are waddling forward and really struggling to give my opponent any positioning on the objectives right now. Did drop a Uranus Thunderbolt here. You know, mostly just trying to see if it actually did anything to the Dragon Slayers or Belagar. Not really, mostly just did a little bit of damage to the Source Warriors, but the Source Warriors are still holding with 39 models and have 1,100 value right now. Just beautiful work on their part. Croxigors with the paddles, getting in on the Quarrelers finally. Did manage to push past the Longbeards. Flame Cannon coming back out, very expensive summon in for the Dawi right now, who desperately need to start capping objectives here. Summoning out some Slayers. Slayers are 900 gold, and they did barely pay for themselves that first time around, but it's gonna take a while for them to get to an objective. And the nice thing about Lizardmen, you got some nice, affordable infantry options, especially against the Dawi. You've got the Red-Crested Skinks, you've got your own Skink cohorts, and Source Warriors, all of whom are very good in this matchup when used appropriately, which I do feel like I've done a pretty good job of, and they are pretty cheap when you consider their price point, as opposed to the Dwarves, who have, you know, Slayers for 900, they've got Dwarf Warriors who don't measure up to the Red-Cresteds at 425, and you can see just how badly they're getting beaten up here by the cohort of Waddle, with some good buffs from Nakai, dropping another Primal Roar up top here just a minute ago, helping push through the last of these Dwarf Warriors. And now that they're dealt with, going to be pushing the Red-Cresteds up onto the number 2 and trying to just recap there, while the Dwarves pushing the few tattered units that they've got out on the field onto the number 1. One of the biggest things I wish the Dawi had brought for themselves, personally, would be some gyrocopters. Gyros are pretty vulnerable to the Lizardmen Air Force. Excuse me, Ripper Dactyls tend to be pretty good against them. There's always the threat of tic-tac-toe. And tic-tac-toe honestly isn't bad against dwarves, because he's incredibly quick. He can actually take out gyros. He's decent against the Thunder Barge as well. He can also land and attack enemy Dawi lords and heroes that are isolated. Dragon Slayers and Belagar not so much, but if there was, say, like runesmiths or Thoric on the field, tic-tac-toe is actually decent against those guys. Unfortunately for the Dawi, they are going to run out of time, just getting hard capped off of the objectives, and only barely able to flip this side objective at the very end here. And I think that match is a pretty good showcase of how you want to handle the Dawi more often than not. Avoiding the worst of the Hero Squad. Now, the Hero Squad did do pretty well. The Dragon Slayers got 1,100 and 2,100 respectively, which is insane, quite honestly. Great performances from them, but considering that some of that value was very tied up in Nakai, who got, 3 Rev Crystal heals, I believe, which is 30% of his total HP pool. A little bit deceptive in terms of the actual value that Dawi were able to get in this match. Ekron's Miners getting crushed, Dragonfire Pass Warriors getting obliterated, and Dawi Warriors aplenty coming out onto the field, and none of them really paying for themselves. Now, the Slayers were the exception. Almost all of them did okay. One didn't pay for themselves, but the performance of the other two was solid, while the Giant Slayers were excellent. 1,500 value on those guys. They are 1,200 gold, though, so pretty pricey and just barely getting over that threshold. And then the eternal Dawi problem in Dom of actually getting up on points when your opponent refuses to engage on your strong-pointed objectives and just goes after and bulldozes over the reinforcements on their way in. And even if you don't finish off units before they get to objectives, leaving them in the tattered conditions that you can force them into, honestly, it works just as well, because it takes forever for those units to then cap points. That is always the Dawi problem. So if you can just take 2 objectives early, play a little bit of kite away from the hardest set Dawi forces, and leave them to just cap 1 objective and be forced to fight over that and trade evenly with you on it while you value trade effectively elsewhere on the battlefield, that's 9 times out of 10 a winning strategy against the dwarves. Very rare that they're going to be able to counter that strategy without just, like, god-tier micro. And unfortunately, LB just didn't quite have enough of the tools he really needed here. A couple of gyros I do think would have been really nice, even if Ripper Dactyls are going after them. They can drop bombs, they can also go after Nakai, and the artillery can still be here and force dives from the Ripper Dactyls as well. It's just more pressure on the lizards, who have to develop out more units on the field before being able to push in all at once, which can give Dawi time to develop infantry out onto the objectives and really start to lock down some points with some very hard cap weight to actually remove at that stage. Another thing he might have considered, don't really need Doomseekers, I don't think, so much against the Lizards. Lizards are pretty good at bringing answers against the Doomseekers. I think instead of bringing these guys, you could probably bring, like, a couple of Thunderers or something, maybe, who would be pretty good units here. But anyways, that's going to be it for me on this one, guys. Hope y'all enjoyed it. I'll be seeing you in the next one. GG's, peace, and take care.